the first thing to discuss is the road through the Philistine country. So the Philistines are a very well-known people in the Old Testament. We see them in Judges, in 1 Samuel. We see them interact with Samson, Samuel, King Saul, as well as King David. And a very famous character that you no doubt colored in Sunday school was a Philistine. Goliath was a Philistine. So the Philistines were a very strong military force that existed in Canaan. They were believed to be a sea people that came from Crete, as well as the islands and even eastern Greece, from that area. And then they came and settled in what is today Gaza, or similar areas right around there. And so what you see here is, and actually I'm going to pull up and do what we did last time and use good old Google Earth, but I found out there's a really cool way to be able to screen record using my iPad, so we're going to do that. So 3, 2, 1, we're live on the Google Earth. There we go. Okay, so there we are, and let's spin around. Tyler is filming this, and unfortunately he doesn't get to see what I'm doing here. Sorry, Tyler. So there you have Egypt. You have the Nile Delta. Goshen was the region, as we talked about last week, that was given to the Israelites back when Joseph and his brothers came into Egypt and were welcomed and invited into Egypt. They were given the eastern side of the Nile basin. And that's Goshen. So last week we talked about them leaving there and going to a town that was near present-day Ismailia. But then now what we have happen is, as you zoom out here, they are traveling from the fertile area of the Nile basin, and they're going to the Promised Land. The Promised Land is Canaan, up here where it says Jerusalem. And this is where they're traveling to. But what God says here is that he does not want to lead them on the road through Philistine country. Philistine country is southwest Jerusalem, right in here. And God does not want Israel at this point to face the Philistines. Now, if God wanted to intervene and overpower them, he could, but God has a plan in place. So the question is, what route did they take? There are 3 ways that they could go in traveling. There is the way that's called the Via Maris, which is called the Way of the Sea, which is the way going up north here. It's the most logical, it's the shortest route. Via Maris, or the Way of the Sea, is the way that God does not want to take them because they would be going through that Philistine country. Another route that they could go is a little bit further south and going basically going diagonal through the Sinai Peninsula. And the third way is going down all the way down along the edge of the Red Sea, which is the route that is believed that they took. So the Philistines, this is an interesting thing. So I want to give you a little bit of history on this that I dug up. I am not a I'm not a historian. This is just what I read in talking about the Philistines. The name Philistine is Hebrew. Palestia is the Greek name, which is where we get the rendering of Palestine. Now, the Israelites did battle with the Philistines. As you remember, Samson, the Philistines are upon you, and then David battled with Goliath. So a few spots where you can read about Israel battling with the Philistines. Judges 13:1, Judges 14:1, 1 Samuel 4:1, 1 Samuel 13:4, and then 1 Samuel 17:23 introduces David and Goliath. Those are just 4 spots, or 5, that have the Philistines in them. But an interesting element, the Philistines historically were annihilated by the Jews. They were under first Saul and then David overpowered and defeated the Philistines. The people that remained then were brought into Canaanite culture and dissolved into Canaanite culture, and they ceased to be a people group. Emperor Hadrian was the Roman emperor from 117 AD to 138 AD. He changed the name of Israel in that region to Palestine. He also changed the name of Jerusalem to Aelia Capitolina. I read one thing that said that he did this because of his hatred for the Jews. And in Jewish history, the Philistines were their greatest enemy. So he changed the name of the entire region to Palestine, and wanting to annihilate the Jews, changed the name of Jerusalem to Aelia Capitolina. It's one of the things that I've read. Now, the controversy that exists today, the Philistines, Palestine, the Palestinians, there is one side that says that the Palestinians that exist now in Gaza and the conflict that's happening now aren't actually Palestinians, that they are actually Jordanians. But there is no question that when you look at that conflict, there are people who lived in Gaza that when Israel came in 1948, some got displaced. Some went and left and went to Aryan countries. And there are different sides. I am not a historian. I am not versed in these elements. But what the Bible does say is that the Philistines were destroyed by Saul as well as King David. Just something interesting to think about, that's still a tension that exists today. So as we look at this, the question is, why did God not take them in the shortest route? And God clearly says that he does not want them, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. And we're going to see that. You see this in Numbers. Moses and Aaron trying to plead with the people to cross over into the promised land, but the people are afraid and they don't trust in God. And as a result of that, God says, okay, you don't believe me, you don't trust me. None of you who were alive in Egypt and joined in the Exodus will ever see the promised land. And that led to it taking 40 years of wandering in the desert before they were able to take the promised land. God says that no one over 20 will be able to cross over into the promised land because they didn't believe. God knew what they were going to do. God also had a plan in place, and we're going to see this as we're going to talk about God wanting to glorify himself. We're going to hit on that before the end, but God still has a role for Pharaoh in this, and he still wants to do amazing, mighty work that will bring glory to himself. And so God has a plan in place. And so he leads Israel in kind of a wandering sort of way that we're going to see that causes Pharaoh to say, okay, they have no idea what they're doing. They're weak. We can bring them back. And we're going to see that in a second. And Pharaoh is going to pursue them. A few Bible passages here. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Now the New King James Version is even more appropriate for our study today. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Imagine from their perspective, why are we wandering around? Why can't we just go the direct route? So many times in life, we think we're off our plan. It's like we're supposed to be going this direction for whatever reason, hardship faces, doors are closed, and for whatever reason we have to go another direction, and we get bitter and we get upset. But it very well might be that God has a plan in place. Joseph being sold as a slave into Egypt, God had a plan to use Joseph through his hardship to save Israel and bring them down into Egypt. And then the Bible talks about refining them in the fire and growing them as a people group into a mighty nation. And we've discussed this. There's between 2 and 2.5 million people that partake in the Exodus. God had a plan in place. God has a plan in place for your life if you will trust him in that. There are times at which there's hardship. You might have caused that own hardship on yourself, and you might have to deal with that.